I believe I am recording. Hello. Hopefully a little bit refreshed since last time. I definitely got very exhausted by the end of the last recording. So I think the last 20 minutes or so were mostly pretty incoherent ramblings. But that's okay. I'm not used to recording myself talking. I'm definitely not used to talking, like holding a monologue for that long. So that's to be expected. So now I'm in 431. This huge, significant part of the game. It was interesting seeing people's reaction getting here. Because you can pretty quickly you can catch on to something being a little bit off. I mean, for one thing, this screen doesn't even have any numbers. You can see that, oh well, there's some change in the format here. By the way, a funny, perhaps funny little tidbit. These tiles, the white tiles, and I didn't know this until recently, but they're from Super Mario 64. So they are actually the texture of the exterior of the castle. And I think there are other SM64 textures that are also used as tiles in this game. I just thought that was pretty interesting. So you wouldn't really think that something in a 3D game would translate to a 2D game like this. But yeah, I want to say, well, I just want to mention at least this type of vine jump is something that I use quite a bit in this game. And I just feel like it's a really cool usage for vine that has been very underutilized. We've had so many needle games using vines in the traditional way where you jump off them. It's really cool. Just have them to slow your momentum. You can combine it with a lot of other gimmicks and types of jumps, and it has for really smooth segments. So that's cool. Yeah, this save is it's an annoying one. But overall, I think for the design here, I didn't really. It's not as meticulous as a lot of the other stuff in the game. So for a lot of things, I really fine-tuned and try to perfect the platforming and really experimented with different ways of making certain jumps. But for the hub, and the hub is this screen and a few others. It's this screen and this screen. Those are the three main hub screens. I felt like it was important for me to not make anything that would sort of outshine what's in the stages. So when you reach a stage, I want it to feel like it's like an event. It's not just a continuation. It's not just more of the same. So it's actually quite deliberate, or I didn't put that much effort into making the hub. I almost want it to be a little bit bland, something you just sort of pass through. And yeah, I have to mention these fucking teleporters. So the teleporters were a serious headache for me. And the reason for that is because I realized at some point, probably pretty early on as the game grew, that I was gonna need to have some kind of warp system. And if I was not gonna have a warp system, I would have to design floor 31 very differently, because otherwise you would just have to backtrack and redo the same segments multiple times. So I realized, oh well, we're gonna need some kind of warp system, and I would never be able to make that on my own. So I also realized that, oh well, fuck, I'm gonna have to ask someone for this, and it's probably like a pretty significant undertaking making like a functional warp system for an area this big. So like in CN3, I think there are over 30 different warp, like places you can warp to. So it's like, it's obviously it's gonna be a pretty tedious task putting that together. And we had some discussions about it. So like we thought about like, well, is there any way that we can do without the warps? And I also thought that like maybe the game would be better off without the warps, because it would actually immerse you more into the world. It's like a warp feels like something put in by the designer. It feels like someone is helping you, someone from above, so to speak. It's hard to like incorporate these in a way where they feel like they're a natural part of the game world. At least I feel that way. It's like actually having to go and walk manually between various locations. I think that can help immerse you. But in the end, like, thank God, Plasma came through. I think I had to sort of talk him into making these, which is like understandable, because that was probably pretty tedious to do. But yeah, he made these sprites himself. He painted them, and I think he also, so if you look closely, you can see that the glow around this little red cube here reflects at the top of the pillar, and I think that's something that Plasma coded in. It's not just like a sprite change. He did that by code somehow, and I know he sort of put maybe an unnecessary amount of time into that, but it's a really cool little detail. So yeah, huge props to Plasma. He really, and like just the way these work in general, they're very smooth. I think the transitions look great, and yeah, it's just a system that really, the game would not be the same without. But yeah, I'm gonna move on. So I'm gonna go to, there's not too much to say about this, I think. I'm gonna enter a stage here. And this is the mirror halls, right? I call this the M stage because this is where you get the letter M. Quite the infamous stage, I think. It's very difficult. But I like this stage a lot. And I think it's a really good place to actually start this playthrough. Because I think this stage can help illustrate some of my views on game design that have really made CN3 what it is. But the idea for this stage, so the idea or the way the stage works is that instead of having one long connected needle save, you instead have these little smaller rooms that are connected by warps. I don't want to do this particular jump because it's difficult. So yeah, instead of having one long connected, it's sort of a disconnected or disjointed save. And I'm gonna be honest, and I think this is important to understand what I mean. So sort of what my design credo is. Like I absolutely recognize that the warping here, the way these rooms are connected, is it's an inconvenience. It's like every time you warp, you have to sort of refine your characters. Like, oh, now I'm here, and then I enter this warp, and wait, where am I? Oh, all right, I'm up there. And like sometimes even worse, you enter something and you're like holding right, and you get killed by a screen transition or something. And really, like, so if you like want to be sort of reductive about it, you can say that, oh well, this is just standard needle, but it's like you've added this extra hurdle and you just made it play just less convenient, more annoying, really. But I believe, and I mean, I understand that some people really found this stage frustrating, and also for other reasons too, probably because it's really difficult. But I think if you try to reduce it sort of to like, oh well, it's just a regular needle stage with this extra hurdle, I think you're analyzing things in the wrong way. and this is something that I'll probably repeat multiple times throughout this playthrough. But like a lot of things in game design are just bigger than the sum of their parts. And this also goes for this game, like overall. So I heard some people, when some people talk about this game, they talk about it like it's a gimmick needle game. So it's like the other Crimson Wheel games, but it's with gimmicks, you know. And like that's the big the big evolution from CN2 to CN3. And to me, that's just not what this game was ever about, like having gimmicks. It's about providing just an entirely different experience from CN2 without really... I'm not going to go into depth about what I mean about that. But yeah, let's talk about this stage. So for me, things can be enjoyable in different ways. And this stage is like definitely not that enjoyable in sort of a standard, in the standard way that you'd expect Needle to be enjoyable. So it doesn't feel that comfortable to play. It's not really smooth, and it doesn't have all that many jumps that are special or that really challenges you in satisfying ways. So it's not enjoyable in the sense of like being fun to play. And this is something that I mentioned before, but fun was not the main focus of this game in the way it was for, I think, probably most of my earlier games. But the goal I had with this stage, this might sound a little weird, but what I wanted to achieve here was I wanted to evoke the sense of being lost, just being lost in something, and the sense of this stage like just going on and on, almost being endless, and you can't really tell where you are. So like you don't know how many saves you have left, you don't really remember how many you've done, and you can never see where the save is. So like each save feels like it just drags on, like, oh, there's just another jump, and then there's just another jump, and it just keeps going, and you don't really know where. So that's actually what I was going for here. And this is like, so I mean, I'll talk about this more when I reach other stages where I had other goals. But I think this is where maybe I had the highest ambitions for this game. Is that I like actually wanted to be more serious about evoking different kinds of emotions, as opposed to just making something that's fun. And for some people, that's not gonna work. Like they're not gonna experience this stage in the way that I was hoping for them. And some people are just gonna find it annoying and just like like I said, a boring needle stage. But that's what I wanted anyways. And I think that the music, for me, that the music along with just the general way the stage works, and how long it is and how it looks, it's pretty successful in being what I wanted it to be. But the first version, so I made some pretty significant alterations to this stage during probably the last month of development. There was so much done to this game the last month. So you're gonna hear that a lot, like, oh, I made this in the last 2 weeks, because it's insane how much we worked during that time. But anyways, before, so we had this, so before this stage was actually half as long, and the saves the saves were quite a lot easier. Like, they were so easy that I could essentially do the entire stage deathless. But then I decided, like, oh, well, this is not actually achieving what I want, which is the sense of being lost. Because you can do this stage in like 3 minutes and you just rush through it. And it's not even, yeah, it's not long, it's not hard. And you don't really have time to sort of immerse yourself in the atmosphere of this stage. So I doubled the amount of rooms. I made 4 new rooms. And along with that, I also made the saves harder, or longer rather. It's like, initially I had 4 rooms, and now this version has 8 rooms. And I pretty much doubled the amount of jumps for each save, I think. And also, so if you play this stage and you like encounter a difficult jump, so like, for example, this is one of the hardest jumps in the stage, I think. And you like look around in the room, you're gonna find out, like, oh, wait, hold on, like, this is also this is perhaps the most difficult jump in the entire stage. We also have this jump, which is pretty hard. And so it turns out that actually, like, the harder jumps tend to be on the same screens. Like, let's look at this screen, for example. Yeah, you got this is a nightmare of a jump. This drop is hard. This jump's hard. This jump's really hard. And well, the screens that have the hard jumps are the ones I added later on. So that probably shows you, like, initially there were jumps like these. Like, if you look at this screen, all the jumps are really quite easy. I lost my kid somewhere. But yeah, and maybe I overdid it. Maybe this stage is too hard now, but I think it had to be hard to achieve what I wanted it to achieve. But yeah, I also want to mention, like, the process of adding these new rooms was like absolutely miserable. So first off, like, the most obvious thing is that I had to make 4 new screens. And I had to make needle in this way, which is not that hard, but it's a little limiting. They only have these small boxes where you can put spikes in. And then I had to rearrange the paths. So, like, for each, it's like each warp has specific coordinates. So that specific warp takes you to this room, and it takes you to these exact coordinates in the room. And it's the same for every warp. And there are almost 100 of these small rooms, right? There are probably like 80 in total. So that means that there are 80 warps, and each warp has these specific coordinates. And I had to assemble these saves together in a way that not only, like, for one thing, I had to balance the saves. Like, I couldn't, put all the hard jumps or like all the jumps on this screen in the same save. So I had to sort of balance. You wouldn't see the same screen too many times, like right after one another. And I also had to balance the saves so the saves would be sort of similar in difficulty. And I just had to change, like, well, every warp pretty much from like how the original version of the stage was. And I also, like, finally, which was actually surprisingly difficult, is that I had to make sure that every little room was used in the final version. So to do that, I had to make this huge paint image with screenshots of all the floors, and then I had to put big check marks on the ones that I had used. So yeah, that was a ton of work actually. I think I started that during an evening, and then I pretty much worked on it until like 4 a.m. I'm pretty sure I also had some university lectures the day after, but like we were pressed on time near the end. I really had to put myself through some shit. But yeah, funny fact about that is that in the end I actually missed a room. It might be this one. I'm not entirely sure. Oh yeah, there's not even a warp here, so yeah, this is the one that I missed. Despite making this paint image. Yeah, in the end I think, like I said, happy with this stage. And I think it what? How did that take me there? I think it demonstrates that how much you can do with just a little. At least for me, like this, it really doesn't feel like standard Needle, even though it is, in essence, like it's just Needle, but you know, disjointed. Like it isn't, because it's bigger than the sum of its parts, but that's how much you can do just by something so small as adding warps between each jump. All right, I'm gonna go to A. I have no interest in doing any of this. Go away. This segment I always enjoyed. It's so intuitive. I feel like a lot of people first try that, even like being unaware that there's gonna be apples. So you just instinctively dodge them. I'll talk about this room because this room was pretty. It's pretty cool to make, but I'll talk about that when I get there the next time. This too, I mean, there's not that much to say about it, but I think this is like a pretty cool visual effect, which is just no effect at all. Like it's a fucking black background with nothing. But I guess it speaks to like the same thing. Like if you actually try, you can do so much with so little. Something that I'm fascinated with. Here we are, the A stage. Just a funny little thing about this stage. So early on in development, I'm gonna turn on the music a little bit. Early on in development, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with this game. I had made maybe, I think this was like the 4th or 5th stage that I made. And at that time, like I only had these few stages and probably like a couple saves in the hub. And I mean, I didn't really have like a grand vision. I didn't realize how massive this game was eventually gonna end up being. But I had some ideas for what I wanted to do. And one idea was that I actually wanted to make this a collab game. So I messaged Denferock actually, and I asked him like, do you want to work on a game with me? I've started a bit on it, like I made a few stages. I think it could be cool. And I wanted him to do mainly visual work. I wanted him to design platforming too, but mainly like visual work, because that's something that I'm not very good at doing myself. And I think he was somewhat interested. And then I gave him the GMK and like asked him to check it out and like see if he'd come up with something, like if he would find some inspiration. And then a few days went by and I didn't really hear from him after giving him the GMK. And then like eventually I had to ask him like, well, did you play it at all? Like, did you test the game? And he said, yeah, I tested it. And I asked him, well, what do you think about it? And he said, I mean, he probably said some other things too, but like the one thing that I remember is that it said, I don't like the stage with the bouncing blocks. Yeah, that it's funny now, but that was pretty disheartening, I guess, at the time. So for me, this stage was this stage pretty much made this game, I think. So the stages that I had made prior to this, I remember some of them, but not all, I think. But I know they were like some of the more straightforward, like more needle-oriented stages. They were not like very experimental, I think. And then I started working on this stage, and I remember like after making this is when I really realized like if I can continue making stages like this that are sort of this out there or interesting or different, like I could actually be making a very, very special game. And I mean, I had no reason to like think that way before this, because I had only made sort of stuff that was similar to things that I made before. But I felt like something just with this stage, something just unlocked inside of me, and I was so happy with it that it just really made me want to invest more time and like actually put effort into seeing what else I could come up with that would sort of match how I felt about this one. The way I started making this stage, and this is it's a little silly, but the first idea that I had, and again, it's like one of those ideas that have just sort of hatched in my head, but it was to have just this long corridor. So like the way this save starts out, it would be a corridor like this where you like bounce up and down, but it would extend the entire screen, and it would be just spike obstacles, right? And that's like, I don't know, to me that seemed like, it seemed interesting at least. I don't think I've seen anyone do the blocks that push you down before. But then upon like actually making that and playing it, I realized that this really does not play good at all. And there was just absolutely no variation. There's like nothing you could do with that. So it would just be like repeating the same jump maybe 10 times and then you beat through. So I started like experimenting a little more with this, and I ended up making this screen, which I think I see this screen as like an introductory screen to the stage. I don't think it's necessarily I think it's probably the weakest part of the stage. But what mostly stuck out to me about this screen then were the visuals. I felt like the visuals alone made it special in a way. That I'd just take these blocks and have different colored blocks with different colored functions, which is like very much a video game trope. But I don't think I'd seen it done this way before in a video game. And I thought in general it just felt very aesthetically pleasing to look at. This little thing is kind of, this is kind of a mistake that I made. So most people, like when they're gonna try to get past this obstacle, they're gonna assume that you just bounce like this. The intended way is actually to go up like this, and then go down like that. I think most people found that out, but not everyone. And if you do this, it allows you to save your double jump. So you just go from start to finish with your double jump, and then you use your double jump at the end, which you need to get over these spikes. But the reason this was a mistake in my design, because this like solution here is pretty counterintuitive, but I think that's fine, and it teaches you something about the mechanics. But the reason it's a problem is because actually you can just go over here, you can land here, and that gives you your double jump back. And I never knew that until I saw people playing the game and doing this the first time. And that means that actually people are gonna do this way, and they're gonna do like a little jump cancel thing, which is it's like unnecessarily hard and uncomfortable, but it's barely possible. So people are gonna do that because they assume it's the intended way, because the segment actually works out. I don't know, so that's just like a small thing that I'm dissatisfied with how I made. Not much to say about that. So this this is where things got interesting for me. So I had the gimmick with the bouncy blocks, and I was like, maybe I can make a stage out of this. Like maybe I can somehow use this gimmick, like in a good enough variety of ways to make it a full stage. And one of the first ideas that I had with like the regular bouncy blocks was a segment like this. So you would bounce up, and then when you would hit the red ones, so you would bounce down. But if you try making something with that, you're gonna immediately discover that that does not work. So like these, I think, give you like a vertical speed of 4, I think. Yeah, and the ones that push it down give you a 3. Yeah. And the big bouncy blocks give you a vertical speed of 10. So just like from touching this, is if these were the other ones, then it would be like, I don't know, like 3 frames before you hit this thing. Like you just shoot up like a cannon, and there's no way to get any sort of horizontal distance. Like you'll reach the top of the screen before you even manage to move like a block sideways. So that was not gonna work, and that was actually really disappointing to me. I thought that would work, and I thought that would be cool, like bounce up and down and like slide. So then this is just a solution to that problem, essentially. I thought, well, how do I make this work? And I guess my first idea was, well, okay, I'm gonna have to have like several screens vertically on top of one another, so that you actually like have time to move sideways. But that's a pretty shitty solution, and you would have to, I don't know if there's a good enough camera that would actually make that playable in a nice way. So at some point I realized that, oh wait, like instead of doing that, I can just take this very same object that I had over here, so these blue blocks and these red blocks, and I can change the value from 10 to 4 and 3 respectively. And like in retrospect, that seems like the most obvious thing, right? Like that's not some groundbreaking solution, but I think in general it's very hard to come up with stuff like that, and you're so accustomed to some gimmick or some way of using a certain asset that your mind is just like completely limited by these preconceived notions of what something is made for, what something does. So like coming up with this was actually like, oh, holy shit! Did I make this? And I think this screen, like if you look at it visually, just doesn't. Like you'd almost be surprised that this is a playable screen and not just some, some like, I don't know, piece of artwork or some like, I don't know, some random screen that you reach, or that this is just part of the background or something. I don't know. But like the fact that this is like a fully functional, playable, and quite intuitive even screen. It's not the most exciting one thing gameplay wise, but it was really inspiring for me to make this actually, and like see that I could take these bouncy blocks, which is actually a gimmick that was in the engine that I was using at the time, which was Gimmick 8 U2 engine. Has a block called like block Haneru or something that just shoots you up. And I pretty much took that like in-game asset and made something that I don't think I've seen in another fan game, and that turned out to have a lot of potential too, to make segments that both play good and they also play different. So like they bring something kind of new to Needle. I'm gonna enter this secret here. I'm gonna be silent because I want to listen to the sound here. That did not happen. That sound effect is the most satisfying thing I found. I think that's from Professor Layton. Maybe? I'm not entirely sure. So it was Zero who found all the sound effects for the game. He had like, I don't know how many sound effects. He had like fucking hundreds of sound effects probably, and like had them sorted in different folders. So like one folder would be called like, oh well, the bubble sound, and one would be called like potential gravity flip or something like that. And then we spent a whole day, like I think we spent like 12 hours just listening through sound after sound and like sorting them and getting rid of ones we weren't happy with. But yeah, he's like, he put in a lot of work for the sound effects for this game. And I think that it really adds a lot. This one, like when you reach a secret or enter a secret, is one of my favorites. Just muted this beautiful song. Probably don't have too much to say about this particular secret. It's still too loud. It's hard to talk when there's like another voice. I find. The general idea behind my secrets, or something that I want to accomplish when I make a secret, is that it feels different from the stages in. And this is probably the secret that feels the most like it could have been a part of the regular stage. So in that sense, I guess it's maybe a bit of a failure. Like I want the secrets, when you enter a secret, I want you to feel like you've actually entered something that doesn't really belong to the game. Like you've sort of unraveled this mystery, like you've actually found a secret. And I don't like when it feels like it's just an extension of the stage. Like someone took a save that was original in the stage and then they just made it a secret. That's a waste of potential, in my opinion. Yeah, this song is called "Don't Dream It's Over." I think it was probably a pretty big hit in the 80s. I discovered this song. I was watching. It was like a TV series based on Stephen King's The Stand, which was my favorite book when I was a young teenager. It's a book about a plague. Probably not. This is probably not the best time to read that book, but it's pretty much a plague wiping out humanity. There's like a few survivors. But yeah, there was a TV series, and this song played in that. And I watched that when I was like 16 or something. And I had just dropped out of high school. And it was like a really, really horrible time for me. But I would listen to this song. I would listen to this song every day, just about. It's such a like simple line, like "Don't dream it's over." But that was very, very comforting for me that time when I was a lost teenager. But yeah, there's a pretty obvious theme going on with the song picks in the secrets for this game. Yeah, I'll let you figure that out on your own if you haven't. The secret is it is what it is. I don't think anyone would really spend enough time here to get frustrated with it. But yeah. Let's move on. One of my favorite screens in the game. So this is when so on the screen before I had come up with this new gimmick with these floaty fields. And here I basically like actually designed something sort of interesting with it, because the last screen is sort of probably like the most basic way you can use the gimmick. But here I wanted to actually explore it and see if I could make a segment that plays more interesting, I guess. And I think the reason I like this screen so much, like as far as how it plays, it's pretty basic. Just go up and down and back down and up and a little couple switches of gravity. But I think visually it just looks so cool. It has all these different colored fields. You have to sort of learn what each of them do, and when you do, it just feels entirely natural to play. It's like second nature almost. But what do I do after that? Well, I don't dwell on anything in this game. Like none of the ideas that I had ever really linger. So I had this save right here that I was very, very, very happy with when I made it. I felt like it was probably the best thing that I've ever made. I don't necessarily think that anymore, but just to give you like some idea of how special that felt to me, making something like that. But then I felt done with that. So like, okay, now I have tried this idea. Like I've had this mix between gravity flips and like floaty fields. And then I wanted to do something else. And I think that's really true for like I should probably show. So like this save is like something very different. It's like a short little save with some precise jumps. But I think in general, like I just don't linger at any ideas in this game. I want to always challenge myself and try to find some new angle to use a certain gimmick. I don't want to make stuff that just pads the game, if that makes sense. So like when I started making stuff in this screen, I was already like looking, oh well, you know, what else can I do? What other colored block can I come up with? And of course, you know, this is not the most creative thing I came up with. Conveyor belts, you know, quote unquote, came up with. and they're barely used for anything here, and I never revisit them. But it was just like important that, okay, well, for this next screen, like I'm gonna do something different. And then when you get to the next screen, it's like something entirely different again. Like I'm just not going back to that idea. Even though there's like most definitely more potential. Like there are so many satisfying segments like that you could make. Like you could definitely make an entire game based off of this gimmick, like a quite long game that I don't think would feel like it overstayed its welcome. Yeah, I'll probably come back to talking more about that. But, I think that like it in part it has to do with my vision of what the game should be. Like I want each save to be something new, like a new challenge and something that surprises, so that it never feels stale. It never feels like you're just going through it. Also, I think that the last stage that I played probably contradicts this a little bit. Like the yellow crimson block stage, that one actually has quite a bit of repetition in a way. But in general, this is true. And also, I think that for me personally, I just need to continue to challenge myself when I make stuff. Otherwise, I'm gonna lose interest. Like I've already made so much needle that is just meant to be like satisfying to play, and I feel like I don't need to continue making Crimson Needle 2s, you know. I want to make something new. I'm gonna shut up for a second because I want to appreciate this is actually one of my absolute favorite moments of the game. It's a very, 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 very tiny moment. Alright, that was the moment. I love the music transition into the stage. I don't know what it is, but it's the most satisfying thing. Like falling down here and this song switch up. I don't know if there's a single other person who's gonna appreciate that as much as I do. So this was not part of the stage initially. Like this second half, the cave half, was something that I came up with kind of late. And that's the reason I made this, is because I felt like there was just too much untapped potential with that last gimmick. I also wanted to use these fields with spikes. So like for this stage, well, here there are probably a bit of spikes here. But something that I was pretty proud of was that I managed, for example, this screen, there are barely any spikes here. These spikes, I mean, they're pretty insignificant. Like they could have been these purple blocks instead. So yeah, that was another thing that I was proud of, that I actually made a whole segment without using any spikes. Even though these are just kill blocks, so they're not like some new obstacle. But I think that aesthetically it just looks very interesting. I get to hear the transition again. Actually, the game audio might be so low on the recording that it's not audible for anyone else. But yeah, that's what I wanted to do with this stage. It's still like each save here is quite different from the one that precedes it. So I'm still like doing new things. But I just wanted to make sure that I at least did like a couple more saves with this gimmick. And I thought when I started making this game, or this stage, I mean, I thought that I would have inspiration and ideas for like a really long stage, that there was a lot more that I could do. But this is just 3 screens, and after I made these 3 screens, I just felt like, okay, I'm done with this gimmick. I don't need to make anything more with it. I've sort of said my piece with how that can be used. It's quite hard finding new ways to use these red fields. The blue fields are more versatile, but the red fields, I mean, they're just like, they're pretty much a water that you can't jump in. It's almost like catharsis water, but you fall a little faster. It's a funny thing about this. So this is the lift. Also another quite infamous part, I think. So I watched a lot of people struggle with this part when I watched people stream this game. And then Para reached this. So this was one of the first stages that Para played. And you know what? When Para streams your game, you're always gonna be a little concerned about what he's gonna think. So he's not always the most patient person, and he's not also well, he can be pretty generous with his criticism, and he can be pretty harsh with it too. So sometimes you know, you're just gonna worry, what's he gonna think about this? And I was pretty worried when he got to this part. I thought like, oh well, this might actually be the end of the road. This might be where he puts the game down. Because I'd seen like some very good players take like 10 attempts to get past this and get very frustrated with it. But yeah, you might suspect where this story is going, but it's like it was such a funny moment, because I think Para beat this on like his second or third attempt, and the way he did it was just the most magnificent thing that I've witnessed. He like actually just like spammed left and right in some like magical way. He must have had like fucking 5 like 1 pixel close call, but somehow he just made it through. I don't know if I could find a clip of that, but it was really funny and a great relief to me seeing that. Okay, like I feel my voice is running out too, but I don't think I have much else to say about this stage. I really like it. Like, I like this part of the stage. I like this part of the stage. I think it's probably one of the most iconic gimmicks. Like, it's one of the gimmicks in the game that stand out the most. And I'm pleased that I managed to make something like that. This is a humorous room that is like actually much harder than it perhaps should be, and the reason this room is hard is because for these red fields to push you down, you actually have to be like the full sprite has to be inside of them. And it's pretty like deceiving. Like right there, I would expect to be pushed down, but I'm not. And that's pretty much like inevitable. Like if you think about how to design these, like one of them has to take priority over the other. Just more or less inevitable that that's gonna happen. Like it had to be either the red field or the blue field taking priority. Okay, I think with that I should be done with this one. So next stages I'll do are X. Am I an idiot? Did I not pick up the A? I don't know if this is something worth doing in the recording, but actually, excuse me. I'll probably edit this part out. Alright. Or not. Wasn't that bad. That's supposed to be the second A, or the first A, I mean, not the second A, but we made a blunder. Alright, I'll see you next time. Thanks.